You're sitting with people who genuinely like you. They laugh at what you say. They include you. They seem comfortable around you. And yet, something feels slightly off. Not with them. With you. A quiet thought appears in the background. If they really knew me, this would change. So you smile. You participate. You say the right things. But somewhere underneath the conversation, you feel like you're performing. Not completely fake. Just not fully real. Why does acceptance sometimes make you feel like an actor in your own life? And why does this feeling show up most strongly around people who actually like you? Hold that question. Because the answer isn't about confidence. It's about how your brain learned to earn belonging. 2. Problem deep dive. Imagine a familiar situation. You're with a group of friends. The conversation flows easily. People are relaxed. Someone compliments you. You're really good at explaining things. Everyone nods. And instead of feeling proud, something tightens inside. You quickly deflect. You joke. You change the topic. You downplay it. Because accepting it feels strange. Almost dishonest. Visual. Group of friends laughing in soft focus. Later that night, you replay moments from the conversation. Did you say something weird? Did you exaggerate part of your story? Were you acting different than usual? The strange thing is, nothing actually went wrong. But your brain still scans the interaction like a security camera reviewing footage, looking for proof that you were inauthentic. Over time, this creates a subtle identity tension. You become good at reading people, good at adapting, good at matching the energy of the room. But the better you get at it, the harder it becomes to tell where adaptation ends and authenticity begins. Psychologists sometimes call this self-monitoring. High self-monitors constantly adjust their behavior based on the social environment. Tone of voice, facial expressions, topics of conversation. It's a powerful social skill. But there's a side effect. When your personality becomes highly responsive to context, it can start to feel less like a stable identity, and more like a series of social settings you switch between. Which leads to a strange experience. You fit in, but you don't always feel like yourself while doing it. And that's where the feeling of being fake begins. But here's the important part. This pattern usually didn't appear randomly. It formed for a reason. 3. Reframe. You're not fake. You're adapted. Your brain learned something early in life. Belonging isn't automatic. It's something you figure out. Something you calibrate toward. Some environments reward certain traits. Being agreeable. Being funny. Being helpful. Being low maintenance. So your brain did what human brains are designed to do. It studied the patterns. And it optimized your behavior around them. Visual. Abstract brain animation adjusting signals. In psychology, this is called social learning. We watch reactions. We track approval. We avoid rejection. Over time, the brain builds an internal map. When I act like this, people respond well. That map becomes part of your identity. The problem isn't the adaptation. Everyone adapts socially. The problem happens when the adaptation becomes automatic. When your behavior adjusts faster than your awareness, so by the time you notice it, you're already playing a role, and it no longer feels like a conscious choice, which makes the experience feel fake. But to really understand why this happens, we need to look at something deeper. How the brain manages social safety. 4. Psychological mechanism. Your brain treats social acceptance as a survival signal. Not metaphorically. Literally. Studies in social neuroscience show that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, especially the anterior cingulate cortex. To the brain, exclusion historically meant danger, so it developed systems to monitor social environments constantly. One of those systems is what psychologists call the self-monitoring network. Think of it like a backstage control panel. Visual. Control room with sliding switches. On this panel are dozens of subtle adjustments. Tone of voice. Body language. Word choice. Humor level. Most of the time you're not consciously moving those sliders. Your brain is. It scans the environment, detects social cues, and automatically adjusts your behavior to maintain acceptance. This works extremely well for avoiding conflict. But it creates a psychological side effect. Because if your personality is constantly being adjusted by external signals, your brain struggles to locate a fixed internal version of you. Here's a simple mental model. Imagine your identity as a radio signal. Your core personality is the station, but the social environment acts like interference. In quiet conditions, the signal comes through clearly. But when there's too much noise, the signal becomes distorted. Not because the station disappeared, but because the environment keeps reshaping how it's received. That's what chronic social adaptation can feel like. You're still there, but the signal keeps shifting. And when people like the version that appears in those moments, you start wondering, is that actually me, or just the signal adjusting again? But there's a way to slowly rebalance this, not by forcing authenticity, but by reducing the brain's need to constantly calibrate. And that starts with a few specific shifts. 5. Practical framework. 6. Notice the calibration moment. First, start observing when your personality begins adjusting. Not judging it, just noticing it. Visual. Person observing their reflection in a window. For example, you enter a conversation and suddenly speak slightly differently. Your humor changes. Your tone softens. Pause mentally and label it. Adjustment happening. This works because of a cognitive process called meta-awareness. When the brain becomes aware of an automatic behavior, activity increases in the prefrontal cortex. That slows down autopilot patterns. The moment you notice calibration, you regain a small amount of control over it. 7. Allow small social imperfections. People who feel fake often try to maintain perfectly smooth interactions. No awkwardness, no pauses, no disagreement. But paradoxically, authenticity emerges through imperfection. For example, let a moment of silence sit in a conversation, or admit something simple like, "I'm not sure how to explain this." These small signals reduce what psychologists call impression management load. Your brain stops trying to perfectly manage how you're perceived. And when that load decreases, your natural responses start surfacing more easily. 8. Practice unobserved identity. Spend time doing things that reflect who you are without an audience. Writing, learning, creating something privately. Visual. Empty room with sunlight, person writing. Why this works? The brain has two motivational systems. Extrinsic motivation, driven by social feedback. Intrinsic motivation, driven by internal interest. When you're constantly in social environments, the extrinsic system dominates. Solitary activities reactivate intrinsic motivation networks, particularly in the dopamine system. This rebuilds a sense of identity that exists independent of approval. 9. Share one slightly unpolished thought. Instead of presenting the perfectly refined version of what you think, occasionally share the unfinished version. For example, "I might be wrong about this, but I've been thinking." This reduces what psychologists call self-discrepancy tension. That's the gap between your real internal thoughts and the polished version you present. The smaller that gap becomes, the less fake interactions start to feel. 10. Let people update their model of you. Your brain often assumes people only like the adapted version of you, but that's usually an outdated assumption. So occasionally allow them to see a slightly different side. Different opinions. Different energy levels. Visual. Person walking slowly at night. When people respond positively to those moments, the brain updates its prediction model. It learns something important. Acceptance didn't disappear. That gradually reduces the need for constant calibration. 6. Integration. Here's the idea to remember. You don't feel fake because you have no real self. You feel fake because your brain became too skilled at adjusting it. Think back to the radio signal. Your identity is still broadcasting. But years of social adaptation turned the volume of external signals up too high. So your brain started tuning itself constantly. The goal isn't to stop adapting. Humans are social creatures. The goal is simply to lower the sensitivity of the tuning dial. Less constant adjustment. More signal coming through. And that shift happens slowly. Through awareness. Through imperfection. Through moments where you stop managing how you're perceived. 7. Quiet, empowering, close. Waves moving slowly on a quiet shore. The strange feeling of being fake around people who like you isn't proof that you're deceiving them. It's often the opposite. It's a sign that your brain learned early how important belonging is. So it became extremely good at protecting it. But protection can become habit. And habit can start running quietly in the background. The moment you begin noticing that process, the system starts loosening. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just gradually. Until one day you're in a conversation. Laughing. Talking, responding. And you realize something subtle. You didn't adjust as much this time. The signal came through a little clearer. And for a moment, being accepted doesn't feel like a performance. It just feels like being there. The goal isn't to erase this feeling forever, it's just to make your inner signal a little bit louder. If you've felt this tension before, I want you to leave a simple phrase in the comments, signal louder. It lets me know how many of us are on this journey together. And if you want to continue exploring the mechanics of your brain with me every week, make sure to subscribe to the channel.